Some of the images contained herein may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Angola Museum. I'm Mary Ann Fisher Giorlando, a board member of the Museum Foundation. I've been on the board for many years, and we're here today to give you a virtual tour of our archival collection. Before we talk about the archives, we'd like to tell you a little bit about the history of this museum and how it came about. In 1995, Burl Cain was appointed the Warden of Angola, and within a very short period of time, he gathered his staff together to try to come up with an idea about how to present the true story of the history of Angola. They maybe figuratively looked out the window because the administration building is over here to my right, and saw this double-wide trailer that had been the St. Francisville Bank of Commerce building. It was no longer occupied. Warden Cain asked the bank if the prison could use that building as a museum, and lo and behold, we had the beginnings of the Angola Museum. He immediately gathered a group of people together, both academics and practitioners alike, that knew the history, both the academic and practical side of the history of Angola, and the Louisiana State Penitentiary system. And also appointed the first director, Mrs. Nadine Tanner. Now, Mrs. Nadine Tanner had been the administrative assistant for many wardens, so in fact she had great knowledge of both history and practices of Angola. By 1997, a committee had been formed to help determine what exhibits, what sort of things would be in the museum to tell this story. I happened to be appointed to that committee within the first year, 1997. We have the minutes from that meeting. By late 1997, this museum was open to the public. And by spring of 1998, we had our official opening to the public. It was the same weekend as the Arts and Crafts Festival here at the prison. We formed a nonprofit organization almost immediately, and so we've been in existence legally since 1998. The mission of the museum the mission of the foundation is to support the museum in providing educational, cultural events, programming, exhibits, and a research center. And so we're going to emphasize today, in terms of looking at our archival collections, we're going to go inside to the museum, and we're going to pinpoint some of our unique pieces that are in the collection. And I'm going to tell you right here, we have a unique collection. We have everything from paper documents that are traditional things that you find in an archival collection, but we have everything from the paper documents to uniforms to guns to taxidermy. So follow me in, and we're going to look at a couple of our exhibits and pinpoint some of our unique pieces in our collection. Our first stop today, the Angola Rodeo exhibit. Now, I always tell our visitors that Angola is much more than the rodeo, but for our purposes today, in terms of looking at archival collections, we have some interesting items here in this exhibit. The first one to my left is one of the many uniforms we have here in the museum, and this one is a uniform from one of our cowboys who competed in the rodeo over a period of 14 years. This is Johnny Brooks's uniform. Now, why was Johnny Brooks important? Johnny Brooks was important because, in fact, he competed in 14 different events during the years he was here at Angola and won the championship all-round rodeo champ 3 times. After the first week of the rodeo in 1999, Johnny Brooks had a heart attack and died. He, in commemoration of Johnny Brooks's participation in the rodeo over those 14 years, the next Sunday they put his chaps on a riderless horse, which opened up the rodeo for that day. The other interesting item we have that not many museums have in their archival collections is further to the left, is a bull's head. Now, bulls play an important part in rodeo competition, don't they, huh? And you will also see a red disc in between the horns of that bull's head. One of the events at Angola's rodeo is called Guts and Glory. The bull is released into the arena, and the men who are competing to grab that red disc off the bull's head in exchange for a monetary prize. So what this exhibit does for us so far is show the unique challenges that we have here with our archival pieces in this museum that you may not expect. The bull's head is a piece of taxidermy, and we have multiple pieces of taxidermy that were done by the prisoners here at Angola. Interesting challenges for how we preserve and maintain such pieces in our collection. The other thing on the table in front of me I want to point out to you are the history of our rodeo programs, and in terms of not only their content and containing what researchers would call unique data that can't be found anyplace else. What I want to point out to you is the rodeo programs have been written by the Angolite staff through the years. Now, who are the Angolite staff? The Angolite staff are men that are here at Angola that write the world-renowned and award-winning Angolite news magazine. I'll show you a more current picture of one. Not quite current, not our recent edition, but I want you to see these beautiful covers. And sometimes these covers were a competition, sometimes these are just the artists that happened to be on the Angolite staff at the year that this program was printed. The Angolite staff is still writing the rodeo program to this day. All right, we're here now to talk about the women in the penitentiary. Many people don't know that there were ever any women in the Louisiana State Penitentiary, but they were there from the very beginning when the prison opened in Baton Rouge in 1835 until 1961 when they were sent to St. Gabriel to a home of their own, as I call it, huh? Now, we're jumping off to the women. It's not just a split, it's a continuation. We talked about the rodeo programs being written and produced by the Angolite staff. And what I want to point out to you is we also have a wonderful collection of Angolites, particularly those starting in 1953 when it was first created. A caveat here, we're not the only repository of those collections of Angolites. They're also in many state-designated libraries throughout the state. But we have the advantage here. I want to point out this one special pictorial issue that was done in 1955 by the Angolite. And as you can see, the title is Angola's Forbidden City, which was Camp D, where the women were kept up until 1956 over here. All right, and we have some great pictures. We have pictures of the women's camp in the background, and we're going to see, but they're not easy to see, even scanning the original documents rather than this representation that I'm using from an exhibit we have had here. So we were fortunate enough that we have another collection of 2,000 negatives. Those negatives represent imagery from the late 1940s on through mid-1960s. And lo and behold, those images, those negatives, are the negatives that were the images that were taken as published here in this special issue on Forbidden City. So I can see a picture here, and I'm going to move to this other page of that pictorial image, or pictorial issue, and we see a laundry here, and the title of that is "Laundry Gives Work to 25 Women." And if you could read the smaller script, it would say, "The laundry's giving work to 25 black women." All right, so the clearer picture of this laundry, and it's a mangle is what it's called, and only people of a certain generation would know what a mangle is. I'm sorry we don't have the mangle here in the museum, however. The other thing I want to point out about these collections, these are Angola's collections. These are some of the images of those long distance shots in the Forbidden City issue. And so you can see much more clearly, there's wash hanging out on the line. As you can see, these buildings are not in very good shape, even though it's a clearer picture of the pictorial issue in the Angolite, which allows us to see a lot more detail because it's the negative that was used to publish those pictures. We're very fortunate. The other collection of women's images that we have were donated by Fonville Winans, who is a famous Baton Rouge photographer, maybe more well known for his bridal pictures and for people of importance, politicians, other important people in Baton Rouge. If you were somebody, you had a Fonville Winans image taken of you. But what's not known about Fonville's history of photography is in 1938, his first job was a state photographer. He was sent out to Angola to take a series of images of the prisons at Angola in 1938. This, over to my left, is one of the images that Fonville took in 1938. This image is called The Hoers, and what I want you to see about this image is the relationship of the sky to the black women hoeing in the field, to the convict guard on horseback. And look at the percentage of sky, which could be meant as freedom, as a student of mine long ago pointed out when I showed him this picture. He happened to be an art major also. And go, the relationship of the size of the horse supervising the women, the relationship of power and freedom. And who's in the field hoeing sugar cane stubble? It's the black women are out in the field hoeing the sugar cane. And in fact, we can contrast that to the white women that are inside making uniforms for the men over the years. And that's been the tradition with the segregation of races in terms of job assignments for the women. The final picture we're going to show very quickly are the new quarters at Angola when they finally moved them to a new and renovated camp at Camp F. The Baton Rouge Advocate described it as looked like a college dormitory, and in fact it did. We have an image of women playing ping pong in the rec hall in their new facility. We're here in what may be one of the most sensitive corners of the museum. We're here in the execution corner. And we're here not only to illustrate the fact that we have the electric chair on exhibit, it's on permanent loan from the State Museum. However, today we want to highlight one of our really important collections from the first chaplain at Angola. He became the official state chaplain in 1908, Reverend Johns, and had a term of 20 years here. Now, his papers, you see a couple of the pieces of his papers from the collection in the original. In his job as a chaplain, he was to either escort the men who were going to be executed, and they were to be hung in that day, or he found the chaplains in the community of that person's religious denomination to accompany that person and to be their spiritual counselor. Now, today I want to home in on the list that Reverend Johns made of 40 men who were executed in Baton Rouge. Now, this is a surprise because Louisiana law dictated that executions took place at the parish where you were convicted. But for a very short period of time, 1910 to 1918, it was decided that executions should take place behind closed doors, that people seemed to be afraid that the groups were getting larger and larger in the parishes, and they were concerned they wouldn't be able to contain those groups. But I want to point out this list that he made, and the list includes the name of the person that was to be executed, the offense they had committed. He included their age, their race, the parish where they were convicted, the date of the execution. But most interestingly, I found was there was a phrase next to every single one of these men. And that phrase said that they died in good faith. And there were a couple of them even. The first man that was executed at the receiving station, Henry Hamilton, he confessed his guilt and faced the hangman and died in faith, is the way Reverend Johns wrote it. There were other men who claimed they were innocent the whole way, and yet that phrase was still there. They still died in peace or in their faith. Interesting collection. Now, what's also important to know about this is not only were they executed at the old penitentiary in Baton Rouge, which was on the site where the federal courthouse is now, they also, when they shut down the old penitentiary on the corner of 4th and Laurel, they created a unit outside the city limits called the receiving station. And in fact, there were 4 more executions that took place at the receiving station in 1918. Rich collection. I haven't even had the opportunity to go through every one of the papers. I know he has support letters that he wrote for prisoners that were applying for a pardon, eloquent support letters that he wrote for these men. But there's an unbelievable amount of information here that will be of great value to researchers, to families that could be researching their own ancestors that may have been executed during this period of time. A unique set, maybe not in terms of documents or paper, but certainly in terms of the content of these collections. All right, we're here at our last stop today, a little pop culture for you all. There have been many films done at Angola, both part and full, over the years. Probably the most famous one you know is Dead Man Walking, but today we want to highlight some of those issues we've talked about in our collection here in Angola. And one of those things are preserving uniforms, and this is the simple manuscript, but again, it's a manuscript that we value because, in fact, it's the script from Monsters Ball signed by the actors and actresses in Monsters Ball. You see the uniform of the guard from Monsters Ball. We also see the uniform of the prisoner from the film Out of Sight that George Clooney wore in that film. I want to finish today with a challenge to you. JFK and Out of Sight both had scenes from Angola. I want you to watch those films and see if you can find exactly at what point the shot was of Angola. If you can find it, please post it to our museum Facebook. Thank you for visiting Angola Museum. Please come back and see us when you're ready to travel.